All right, here we are. We're reading chapter 4 in the most amazing book Napoleon Hill probably wrote, which is Outwitting the Devil. And we just started the interview with the devil yesterday. And now this title is chapter 4 is entitled Drifting with the Devil. Tell me first about your most clever trick. The one that you use to ensnare the greatest number of people. If you force me to give away this secret, it will mean my loss of millions of people now living and still greater numbers of millions as yet unborn. I beg of you, permit me to pass this one question unanswered. So, His Majesty the Devil fears a mere humbled earthbound creature? Is that right? It's not right, but it is true. You have no right to rob me of my most necessary tool of trade. For millions of years, I've dominated earthbound creatures through fear and ignorance. Now you come along and would destroy my use of these weapons by forcing me to tell how I actually use them? Do you not realize that you will break my grip on every person who heeds this confession you are forcing from me? Have you no mercy? Have you no sense of humor? Have you no sportsmanship? Stop stalling and start confessing, man. I mean, who are you to ask mercy of one who you'd destroy if you could? Like, who are you to talk of sportsmanship and a sense of humor? I mean, for all I know, you, by your own confession, you've set up a living hell on earth where you punish innocent people through their fears and ignorance. And as for minding my own business, this is just what I'm doing. When I force you to tell exactly how you control people through their own minds. My business is, if it can be called a business, it's actually helping to unlock the doors of the self made prisons in which men and women are confined because of the fears that you've planted in their minds. Commentary: Mr. Earthbound has the power to force the devil to answer his questions. His own knowledge of independent thought and lack of fear are his weapons to force his confession. When they say, like, the best way to defeat or beat a bully is just to stand up to them. And that's what he's doing. He's using his power of conviction and standing up to the devil within and demanding. He was a copywriter, he was an advertiser. So he's very good with his words and choice and poignant. And even if it's completely imaginary and made up for the fact of it's a fictional story, it's an amazing depiction of how you could easily be fooled and rolled over and get scared that his majesty, the devil, is screaming at you and saying, whatever. He goes, no, get right to the point. Now tell me. And so to me, this has so far been a great story. So that was the question. He's like, stop stalling. He goes, my greatest weapon over human beings consists of two secret principles of which I gain control of their minds. I'll speak first of the principle of habit, through which I'll silently enter the minds of people. By operating through this principle, I establish, or I wish I could avoid using this word, the habit of drifting. When a person begins to drift on any subject, he is headed straight toward the gates of what you earthbound call hell. Well, describe to me all the ways in which you induce people to drift. So just define this word first, and then tell us exactly what you mean by it. I can best define the word drift by saying that people who think for themselves never drift, while those who do little or no thinking for themselves are, in fact, drifters. A drifter is one who permits himself to be influenced and controlled by circumstances outside of his own mind. He would rather let me occupy his mind and do his thinking than go to the trouble of thinking for himself. A drifter is one who accepts whatever life throws in his way without making a protest or actually even putting up a fight. He doesn't know what he wants from life, and he spends all of his time getting just that. A drifter has lots of opinions, but they're never his own. Most of them are actually just supplied by me. Interesting, huh? A drifter is one who's too lazy mentally to use his own brain. That is the reason I can take control of people's thinking and plant my own ideas in their minds. Some commentary. Those who do little or no thinking for themselves, they are drifters. A drifter is one who permits himself to be influenced and controlled by circumstances outside of his own mind. That commentary was just a bolded quote, and there was nothing more, no added commentary, but it's highlighting a very important quote from Napoleon Hill. And it's just basically saying, if you don't think for yourself, if you're not aware of your thinking, you're not consciously aware of how you're feeling and thinking and doing that thought, feeling loop pattern that creates action that you take in your life that produces results. If you're not actively aware of it and correcting it, you're not thinking, but you're allowing circumstances outside of your own mind to influence and control your thought, thinking, thought, feeling, acting, cycle, loop behavior. If you're under the influence of those things outside of your own mind, those circumstances outside of your own mind, like all of a sudden I get in car accidents all the time, I get beat up, I lose jobs, I'm late to work. All these things are like influences outside of my control. If those start to take control, then you're potentially drifting, is by this definition. So that's my added commentary. Since there was none in the book, it's just those of us who I'm not always in control. I'm not always cognizantly aware of the decisions I'm making. But if you and I are trying to pay more attention and use our thinking faculties, delaying your decisions in which you might have elevated emotions at a lower vibrational energy state, like I'm pissed off, I'm hurt, I'm anxious, I've got anger and regret or jealousy or guilt or fear. If any of those thoughts happen, if I just delayed for 10 seconds before I actually believed those thoughts, which would trigger feelings, which would trigger actions in my body, because I'd be thinking more about those thoughts, because I'm triggering more feelings, because those chemical release in the bodies feel good. I become addicted to my self-defeating behaviors and ways of thinking with fear base at the root of all of it. Fear of poverty or fear of death or fear of illness or fear of aging or fear of a loss of a loved one. I mean, those are the things that the devil revealed in the first interview with the devil, chapter 3. Now here in chapter 4, we've just got to become aware. Just be consciously aware of your thought patterns and capture them. You become a thinker, not a drifter. Not saying it's going to be easy, but that's my take. Yeah, I think I understand what a drifter is. I'm sure you guys do too. Tell me the exact habits of people by which you induce them to drift through life. Start by telling me when and how you first gain control of a person's mind. My control over the mind of a human being is obtained while the person's young. Sometimes I lay the foundation for my control of a mind before the owner of it is born, by manipulating the minds of that person's parents. Sometimes I go even further back than this, and I prepare people for my control through what you earthbound call physical heredity. You see, therefore, I've got two approaches to the mind of a person. Yes, go on, and please describe to me in a little more detail these two doors by which you enter and control the minds of us simple human beings. As I've stated, I help to bring people into your world with weak brains by giving to them before birth as many possible of the weaknesses of their ancestors. You call this principle physical heredity. After people are born, I make use of what you earthbound call environment. As a means of controlling them, this is where the principle of habit enters. See, the mind is nothing more than just a total sum total of one's daily habits. One by one, I enter the mind and establish habits. These lead finally to my absolute domination of the mind. Just tell me a little bit more of this most common habit by which you control the minds of people. That is one of my cleverest tricks. I enter the minds of people through thoughts which they believe to be their own. See those made up scenarios of our future that haven't yet happened yet, but they're based off of experiences from our past. They color our made up thoughts that are mostly self-defeating in nature of us losing or failing. They actually haven't happened, but we believe they have happened. And since we believe they happen, like, oh, I'm just always going to fail, so I'm going to suck again if I try again next time, those thoughts aren't even your own, is what he's suggesting here. He enters the minds through people, through their thoughts, which they believe to be their own, but they're not. They're not truth. They're made up truths that absolutely do come true as you play them out because we start to believe it, because we see more evidence of it. We start sucking and failing and being like, see, I told you so. See, I'm always a loser. I'm always going to fail. I'm not saying you are that person. I'm saying this is what can happen. This is what has happened to people who've believed these stories made up, that which are not their own. Those most useful to me are fear, superstition, avarice, greed, lust, revenge and anger, vanity, and even plain laziness. Through one or more of these, I can enter any mind at any age, but I will get my best results when I take charge of a mind while it's young, before its owner has learned how to close any of these 9 doors. Then I can set up habits which keep those doors ajar forever. Okay, I'm starting to catch on to your methods. Now, let's go back to the habit of drifting. Just tell us all about this habit since you say it's one of your cleverest tricks in controlling the minds of people. As I said before, I start people drifting during their youth. I induce them to drift through school without knowing what occupation they wish to follow in life. Here I catch the majority of people. Habits are related. Drift in one direction, and soon you'll be drifting in all directions. I also use environmental habits just to give me a definite grip on my victims. All right, I see. You make it your business to train children in the habit of drifting by inducing them to go through school without any aim or purpose. All right, okay, so now tell me some of your other tricks with which you cause people to become drifters. Well, my second best trick in the book is developing the habit of drifting. This one is where I put into operation with the aid of parents and public school teachers and even religious instructors. I warn you not to force me to mention this trick. Do not disclose this trick because if you do so, you will be hated by my coworkers who will help me use this trick. If you publish this confession to book form, which he did, your book will be barred from the public schools, which it was, or at least blacklisted. It will be blacklisted by most of the religious leaders. It will be hidden from children by many parents. The newspapers will not dare to give reviews of your book, and millions of people will hate you for writing the book. In fact, no one will like you or your book except those who you think. And you know how very few there are of those of this sort. My advice to you is to let me skip the description of my second best trick. Commentary. The author knew this opinion would be one of the most controversial aspects of his book. In fact, his wife was so concerned about how it would be received that she made him promise that he wouldn't ever publish it. In fact, it's only until now, well after her death, that the families even agreed to share it with the world. I would encourage you to follow Hill's argument about the public education system and the religious teachers, and then just decide for yourself. So, for my own good, you wish to withhold the description of your second best trick. Okay. Well, no one will like my book except those who think, eh? Very well. Go ahead and answer. You'll regret this, Mr. Earthbound. But the joke is on you. By this mistake of yours, you will divert attention from me to yourself. My co-workers, of whom there are millions, they'll forget about me and hate you for uncovering my methods. Never mind. Come on, man. Just tell me. I don't really care anything about me. Just tell me. Tell me all about this second best trick of yours with which you induce people to drift with you to hell. All right. My second best trick is not second at all. It is first. It is first because without it, I never could gain control of the minds of the youths. Parents, school teachers, and religious instructors, and many other adults unknowingly serve my purpose by helping me to destroy in children the habit of thinking for themselves. They go about their work in various ways, never suspecting what they're doing to the minds of children or the real cause of the children's mistakes. Commentary. Have you ever heard a parent finish a child's sentence? Or have you ever seen a parent complete a child's homework? Remember, those science fairs at school, remember when it was obvious the kids had a lot of, quote, outside help with their science projects? Mom and dad may have helped, actually, a little bit too much. But deep down, they know that their child appreciates the help and recognizes what great parents they are, right? Actually, the child may be really thinking, Mom and dad don't think I can do it on my own, so why even try? Eventually, this parental help will actually destroy the child's self confidence. By allowing children to be truly in charge, parents will help their kids develop the habit of thinking for themselves. All right, I can hardly believe you, Your Majesty. I've always believed that children's best friends were those closest to them, their parents, their school teachers, their religious instructors. Where would children go for dependable guidance if it wasn't for those who have charge of them? Well, this is where my most cleverness comes in. This is the exact explanation of how I control 98% of the people of the world. First, I take control of people during their youth, before they come into the possession of their own minds by using those who are in charge of them. I especially need the help of those who give children their religious instruction because it's here that I break down independent thought. I start people on how the habit of drifting goes by confusing their minds with unprovable ideas concerning a world of which they know nothing about. It's here also that I plant in the minds of children the greatest of all fears, the fear of hell. I know. As I'm reading this chapter, I'm thinking myself, my kids, like a lot of people I know, they would just grow up in a religious church of some shape or form or whatever, be told stuff, and you just kind of start to believe it. You don't really question it or doubt it because your teachers and religious teachers are like, oh, yeah, dude, this is the real stuff, the real deal. So you definitely get exposed to hell. I at least was here in the Western culture, Western society. I was exposed to a heaven and hell and a devil and this like scary place and like don't sin, don't do bad things. Don't bad things are like there's a right and wrong and a good and a bad. It's very black and white and evil and salvation. So, um yeah, it's definitely an interesting trick that we really play on ourselves. But there's this hell on earth that we get exposed to, and this is going to probably rock a bunch of people. It's starting to bring up thoughts in my own head as I'm reading this, and that's what I wanted to share. It's kind of crazy when you start to think about it. Yeah, okay, I understand that it's easy for you to frighten children with the threats of hell, but how do you continue to make them fear you and your hell after they grow up and learn to think for themselves? Well, children grow up, but they don't always learn to think for themselves. Listen, Once I capture the mind of a child through fear, I weaken that child's ability to reason and to think for himself, and that weakness goes with the child all through life. Is that not taking unfair advantage of a human being by contaminating his mind before he becomes, or actually arrives into full possession of it? Everything is fair that I can use to further my ends. I have no foolish limitations of right and wrong. Might is right with me. I use every known human weakness to gain and keep control of the human mind. I understand your devilish nature. Now, let's get back to further discussion of your methods of inducing people to drift to here, hell on earth. From your confession, I see that you take charge of children while their minds are young and pliable. Tell me more about how you use parents, teachers, and religious leaders to ensnare people into drifting. One of my favorite tricks is to coordinate the efforts of parents and religious instructors so they work together in helping me to destroy the children's power to think for themselves. I use many religious instructors to undermine the courage and power of independent thought of children by teaching them to fear me, but I use parents to aid the religious leaders in this great work of mine. How do parents help religious leaders destroy their children's power to think for themselves? I mean, I've never heard of such a monstrosity. I accomplished this through a very clever trick. I caused the parents to teach their children to believe as the parents do, in connection with their religious, politics, marriage, and other important subjects. In this way, as you can see, when I gain control of the mind of a person, I can easily perpetuate the control by causing that person to help me fasten it upon the minds of his offspring. Okay, makes sense. Well, in what other ways do you use parents to convert children into drifters? I cause children to become drifters by following the example of their parents. I mean, come on, think about it. Most of whom I've already taken over and bound eternally to my cause at that time. In some parts of the world, I gain mastery over a child's mind and subdue their willpower in exactly the same way that men break and subdue animals of lower intelligence. It makes no difference to me at all how a child's will is subdued, as long as it fears something. I'll enter its mind through that fear and limit the child's power to think independently. Here's some commentary. The devil will enter a child's mind through fear and then limit the child's power to think independently. I can remember the many religious leaders I've known in the past and instantly divide them between fear based instructors and faith based instructors. In fact, I still get a chill from reliving the fire and brimstone of some of the fear based sermons I heard as a child. In contrast, I remember the uplifted feeling of hope and courage from the faith based sermons. Hill's words of wisdom certainly ring true for me. Does fear then paralyze independent thought? Okay. It seems that you go out of your way to keep people from thinking. Am I right? Yes. Accurate thought is death to me. I cannot exist in the minds of those who think accurately. I do not mind people thinking as long as they think in terms of fear, discouragement, hopelessness, and destructiveness. When they begin to think in constructive terms of faith, courage, hope, and definitiveness, a purpose, they immediately become allies of my opposition and therefore are lost to me. Okay, I'm beginning to understand how you gain control of the minds of children through this help of their parents and religious instructors, but I don't see how the school teachers actually help you in this damnable work. Well, school teachers, they help me gain control of the minds of children. Not so much by what they teach the children as because of what they do not teach them. The entire public school system is so administered that it helps my cause by teaching children almost everything except how to use their own minds and think independently. I live in fear that someday some courageous person will reverse the present system of school teaching and deal my cause a death blow by allowing the students to become the instructors, using those who now serve as teachers only as guides to help the children establish ways and means of developing their own minds from within. When that time comes, the school teachers will no longer belong to my staff. Here's some commentary. Here's the essence of Hill's critique of public education, written in 1938. I mean, do you agree with him? Think of young children during kindergarten and first grade. They're enthusiastic and volunteer for everything. They raise their hands and they're excited to learn. Now, fast forward just 10 years and think about those same children as high school students. I mean, the ones sitting in the back of the class, never making eye contact with adults, absolutely never volunteering or asking a question ever again. They've disengaged from the learning process. Well, what happened to these children? Their 10 years of schooling, they perceive that to make an error will subject them to ridicule and scorn. So, what do? They just cease to participate in order to protect themselves. They're taught that the solutions to all their problems and conflicts, they lie not in their own hands and minds, but in the hands and mind of the teacher, the representative, or the authority. To act independently in the face of conflict brings swift rebuke and reprisal from the teacher. They're basically conditioned, all of us. Students are conditioned by the time they're in high school that if they lash out or they do something stupid, they get lashed out at. That the teacher would be like, "Yeah, you done dumbass," scorn. And they're like, "Oh shit." And my friends will make fun of me. And so they just we get conditioned at this point to not even try, to not even want to fail, to just sit in the background and be quiet. To act independently in the face of conflict brings swift rebuke and reprisal from the teacher. The children are thus discouraged from independent thought and indoctrinated with the concept that they're incapable of resolving their own problems. Or there may be many excellent teachers, Hill's critique seems validated by the state of education today in 2011. If you agree with Hill, what do you think we can do about it? One thing that we should do is to seek out those teachers and schools who encourage independent thought in their students and applaud them for their courage. Yeah, that's still ringing loud and true 13 years, 14 years later in 2025. I was under the impression that the purpose of all this schooling was to help children to think. Well, that may be the purpose of schooling, but the system in most of the schools of the world does not carry out this purpose. School children are taught not to develop and use their own minds, but to adopt and use the thoughts of others. This sort of schooling destroys the capacity for independent thought, except in a few rare cases where children rely so definitively upon their own willpower that they refuse to allow others to do their thinking. Accurate thought of the business is Accurate thought is the business of my opposition, not mine. Oh, wow, what a relationship, if any, has your opposition with the homes and churches and the schools? Just tell me, what relationship, if any, has your opposition with the homes and churches and the schools of the world? Your reply to this question should be interesting, to say the least. Here's where I make use of some of my more clever tricks. I cause it to appear that everything done by the parents, the school teachers, and the religious instructors is being done by my opposition. This diverts any attention from me while I manipulate the minds of the young. When religious instructors try to teach children the virtues of my opposition, they generally do so by frightening them with my name. That's all I ask of them. I kindled this flame of fear into proportions which destroy the child's power to think accurately. In the public schools, the teachers further my cause by keeping the children so busy cramming non essential information into their minds that they have no opportunity to think accurately or to even analyze correctly the things their instructors teach them. Do you claim for your cause that all those who were bound by the habit of drifting? No. Drifting is only one of my tricks through which I take over the power of independent thought. But before a drifter becomes my permanent property, I must lead him on and ensnare him with another trick. I'll just tell you all about this other trick after I finish describing my methods of converting people into drifters. So, do you mean that you've got a method by which you can cause people to drift so far away from self determination that they can never save themselves? Yes, it's a definite method, and it's so effective that it never fails. All right, so do I understand? I understand that you're to claim your method is so powerful that your opposition cannot reclaim those who you've permanently ensnared through drifting. I claim just that. Do you think that would control so many people if my opposition could prevent me? Nothing can stop me from controlling people except the people themselves. Nothing can stop me except the power of accurate thought. People who think accurately do not drift on any subject. They recognize the power of their own minds. Moreover, they take over that power and yield it to no person or influence. So, what he's saying here, he's saying he has the ultimate power and control once he gains control over our minds. But and not a but, and that God can't take over this power and control unless we decide to, unless we consciously choose and become aware of our thought, become thinkers and not drift on any subject, and basically take control of our own lives and destiny and take responsibility and take a assessment of our reality. So we need to first get a goal and understand what it is that we want in our lives and where do we want to go and what do we want to accomplish. Then we take an inventory of our reality and say, like, really, what is our current situation? And our current situation might totally suck balls, and that's okay for the moment. Now let's create an opportunities brainstorming session of what are all the things that we could do to actually, come up creatively and accomplish our goals. Like, get super creative. Like, what are all the things that we could do? And now, last is going to be like, what will we do? Like, what is the actual choice that we're going to make to go do this thing? And then accountability daily. If we're just going to commit to this one thing and do it long enough to see that it comes to fruition, now we've walked through the entire process that which we can accomplish anything, our goals. And once we do that, we're now thinkers. We're now not drifters, but we're choosers of our own destiny. And he's saying here that God can't even do that for us because we need to do it. God is going to be willing, like a waiter or a chef in the kitchen. And if the universal chef is getting orders from the universal waiter that, hey, dude, I went to the table and I offered this menu of everything available to them in the entire universe if they just ordered it off the menu. And I keep getting orders of like, dude, no, I don't want this ultimate life. Like, go ahead and hold off for me. Like, I need something perfect moment to happen. Somehow, like the flood is happening, and when people kept coming up to me trying to save me, a helicopter drops its ladder. A boat kind of cruises up to my rooftops and tries to save me, and I drown. And God's like, dude, what do you mean? Like, I didn't save you? I sent like four guys to try to help save you. And you were like, dude, no, I'm waiting for like a miracle. God's going to bail me out. It's like, what the do you think was going to happen, bro? Well, in that story, that's exactly what we're doing when we don't actually take control of our thought and actually define what it is that we really want, and then make an inventory of what we can actually do about it and then stick to the plan and just do something about it day in and day out. We'll actually stick through the plan and we'll start to see come to fruition our things that we're imagining in our minds. And we're no longer drifting, we're actually thinkers, and we're not able to be controlled by fear or fear-based thoughts because every morning, every day, every moment of every way, we're catching ourselves and thinking like, wow, what would it be like if my goals and dreams were already accomplished? Like, I woke up today and what's next? Like, this is amazing, this feels great. And you look at your spouse, your partner, you look yourself in the mirror, whatever it is, and you say like, man, it feels amazing that all of my goals are accomplished. Thank you. Gratitude is the ultimate form of receivership. When you say thanks for something, it's because someone paid you. You received a compliment. They paid you with something, which is their words. It could be their time, it could be their money, it could be a product or service in exchange for that. You said thank you. You received something, you were grateful for it. So when you're grateful for a memory that's already happened, because you imagine your future as if it's already happened in the past, and you hold an emotion of victory, of like actually feeling grateful and alive, and you just look at yourself, look at your spouse, your partner, whatever. She's like, man, isn't it amazing that we actually have everything that it is that we want? I feel so grateful. This is crazy. Pinch myself, and then hop back in your sports car and cruise back down the canyon mountain back to your mansion pad, pick up your kids and have a party because you just arrived back from Africa and we're going to throw a summer shindig. Like, what kind of nonsensical, crazy world am I living in my dream mind? But that's sensical because things are starting to play out. It's like, dude, you're on track for that this year. You're right. Like, this summer could literally be the summer that you go and make an offer on this dream home that you've had since November 2022, roughly, when you first started putting this in a My Movie, which, by the way, I'll talk to you about my movies and how I built them and how I read a book, Becoming Supernatural by Dr. Joe Dispenza. And halfway through this book, it describes how to make a My Movie. And I did some research on the web and I created 3D goggles and I throw a meditation on and I slap my phone in these goggles. And I'm literally taken through a kaleidoscope into a B-roll camera footage with the soundtrack audio of Living on a Prayer. That's my song of choice. And then I come and exit in a psychedelic kind of kaleidoscope thing, and then come out of an alpha state and come out of my meditation and wake up and I start to see these things in my reality. I need to start practicing that more. And I'll do a video to break down exactly how I do that and set one of these things up. And the crazy thing is that when we start to do that, we're not drifters in drifting in habit. We're actually taking conscious choice. And that's all he's saying, that, you know, he controls the minds and keeps millions of people in fear of poverty all their lives, rather than starting to imagine these things and doing things daily. Because, like, if I keep building softwares, I know I'm going to make money. And the more the people that want these softwares, the more money people are wanting to throw at me. This is great. This is great news. Like, I'm just helping people become better versions of themselves. I'm learning now that AI is not just saving time for people, but it's duplicating people. The new AIs, the things that I'm learning and seeing, these new assistants from ChatGPT, they've released in their um, like $200 a month pro plan. It's so amazing that it can control your desktop computer and do things like, you know, lots of things. I mean, the most simple things it does really well is like Airbnb bookings and like your restaurant bookings and ordering your grocery delivery by click of one button, kind of fun things. But it's better than what Anthropic or Claude's take over your computer and do things was. Apparently that one wasn't repeatable and it wasn't very reliable. And then the ChatGPTs released this new product right before China's DeepSeek just dropped the big bombshell on the world and said, dude, now we're actually back to free again. ChatGPT's been around long enough that they charge an arm and a leg to use. And, these guys charged or less than $6 million in investment, said, yeah, you don't need tons of money to kick your ass. We're China. And we'll be transparent and say, we're going to take all your privacy data and store it somewhere in the Republic of China if you want to use their website directly. But if you want to download DeepSeek on a local server and just make API calls with their technology that's free and it tells you exactly all the steps it takes to do the reasoning and logic, whereas ChatGPT is now hiding most of the steps when you ask it, like, tell me the steps that you took and arrived to get to this answer and conclusion. I don't think they wanted anyone to be able to copy their stuff. And now here's some developers that came and dropped the bombshell. And now it's like, okay, what can we do? We can release the coolest thing in the world. And ChatGPT releases this amazing tool that, maybe in a couple of years' time, it's going to revolutionize everything we do. When you just can talk to a tool and have speech to speech rather than speech to text and text to speech, all this kind of conversion, when the fastest way that we can communicate with technology is with our voice. And if we can just speak to a voice agent and we can just speak a command and then press a button or have it just roll, like with the Alexas. I've got one right here. So if I say that out loud, it'll say, yeah, what's up? With those speech commands, we can speak to technology. And as this gets better and better, we can have it control our computers and we can run like three of these things at the same time. We're now duplicating ourselves. We're not just saving time by running one sequence. We can copy and paste these actions of like booking appointments, doing all these fun things, creating stuff, s- what I would normally have to do in a given period of time. Now I can run them in parallel, not in series, and I can duplicate myself. And we're going to be able to, humans, duplicate ourselves through these systems. And that's really exciting. Now, why did I go off on that massive tangent? Well, like, this is Wednesday, January 29th. This is latest breaking news. This week, Monday, I think the whole DeepSeek thing hit the internets and dropped a bomb on the world. Now everyone's talking about it. And those that were in the know were learning and talking about it before this week. And I just watched a couple of their videos to get up to speed on the latest news. And this is some insane, crazy stuff. Um, and so I'm just talking about it because I just happen to be having fun with it. And I know the more and more that I develop and learn about it and deploy my skills to the world and share with every one of you, it's going to be better for getting what I want, which is like I'm just closing my mind, eye, and imagining this outcome thing and attaching feelings and emotions. Now, it's not easy every day. So it does take repetition. It's like a consistency thing. And other than that, you've developed a new habit. So I develop a new habit of imagining what it is that I want through the stuff that I picked up with our psycho-cybernetics book that I read at the first of this month, and just start developing a new habit of imagining and thinking of the things that I want as if they're already done and attaching a feeling of victory, of hope, of joy, of love and great gratitude emotion. All right, let's continue on. Okay. Go ahead and tell me more of the methods by which you cause people to drift to hell with you. I cause people to drift on every subject through which I can control independent thought and action. Take the subject of health, for example. I cause most of people to eat too much food and the wrong sort of food. This leads to indigestion and destroys the power of accurate thought. If the public schools and the churches taught children more about proper eating, they would do my cause irreparable damage. Marriage, for instance. I cause men and women to drift into marriage without plan or purpose designed to convert the relationship into harmony. Here's one of my most effective methods of converting people into the habit of drifting. I cause married people to bicker and nag one another over money matters. I cause them to quarrel over the bringing up of their children. I engage them in unpleasant controversies over their intimate relationships and in disagreements over friends and social activities. I keep them so busy as finding me fault with one another that they never have time to do anything else long enough to break the habit of drifting. Occupation. I teach people to become drifters by causing them to drift out of school into the first job that they find, with no definite aim or purpose except to make a living. Through this trick, I keep millions of people in fear of poverty all their lives. Through this fear, I lead them slowly but surely onward until they reach the point beyond which no individual ever has broken the drifting habit. That was me, dudes. Like, I got the first job that I landed out of school exactly as he said. He said, cause people to become drifters by having them land the first job they can find when they come drift out of school with no plan or aim or purpose except to make a living. And I definitely just wanted to make most that I could and get a stable, comfy job that took care of my bills and took care of my family. And I became afraid to do anything else because I was afraid to lose that stability, that income. In November 11th, 2024 until January 29th, 2025, I still have no stable recurring income. I've made $0 that are expected repeatable and recurring except for, a small payment that's going to come break into two payments and then it's done. So I'm still documenting that's like day 76 or something, maybe 76 or 77, that I'm still without any recurring revenue. And so once that recurring revenue hits with these big deals that are going through right now, um, it's going to be fun to document that it's just the small daily committed actions compounded over a long period of time yield amazing results. It's going to take off like little bit to boom. I've done this before when I started running paid ads for myself for the first time, eating my own cooking. I was selling paid ads to customers. When I ran it for myself to get the customers to run paid ads for, when they'd ask me, "Hey, how do I know this is going to work?" I say, "Well, hey, it worked on you now, didn't it? Like that's why you bought, right? Like, how do I know it's going to work? Well, it already worked on you. You already That's what's happening now with my demos. It's like, how do I know it's going to work? I need to get some testimonials or some feedback that this thing, they're excited this thing works. Well, yeah, it worked on you, right? Before we even started talking, you did a demo letter, the AI voice demo or a texting demo, and we're like, "Yeah, this is pretty cool." That's what you first thing you said to me when I first met you. You understand, like, this is how this is working now. And there's, this fear of poverty that was in me. I was afraid to step away and do anything. And he's saying this is the occupation and marriage are the top two places that he goes after to establish this fear in us. Savings. I cause people to spend freely and to save sparingly or not at all until I take complete control of them through their fear of poverty. I mean, I heard a stat that like there's less than 40% of people have $400 or less in an emergency fund, and like 10% of people have $1,000 or less, something like that. Like crazy stat. I would need to back that up, and I would say do your homework if you really care. But bottom line is, we all know not enough of us have enough savings, cash, liquid savings in case shit hits the fan. I mean, I'm not saying that it's smart to have like a bunch of cash on hand, like certain people would yell at you, like Grant Cardone. But like to have access to an emergency, you need to be liquid or at least have some credit usage funds or something, some kind of line of credit or a way to bail yourself out in case of an emergency. And not many people do. So then they get this fear of poverty. See, all these seem to be leading to fear of poverty. The marriage conflicts often were because they didn't have a plan. They didn't know exactly like how they're gonna bring up their kids. There's disagreements in relationships and social activities, but the fear of poverty, the money matters. M- You know, they're bickering and nagging one another over money matters. Money matters, and so far, the top four: one, marriage, occupation, and savings, or top three, excuse me, were regarding money matters. If you didn't have any money matters, money problems, yes, there were maybe some other things in the marriage, but at the root of all those nagging problems, those, environments and social activities that you don't want to deal with, or bringing up children in a certain way, if you didn't have money problems, like you would have other problems, and your money would fix 90+% of those problems. Now, if I said that and it disturbs you, well, give it a second thought. Like if you had uh, relationship problems with your children or your spouse or whatever, you could hire coaches, you could hire personality trainers, you could hire consultants, you could hire uh, a lot of different people like counselors, therapists. You can hire psychologists. You can hire a lot of people to help out with relationships, and you can hire fitness coaches and eating and dietitians and you coaches and sleep health coaches. And you could do diagnostic tests for sleep apnea and making sure that you're eating right, working out and moving right, and you're sleeping right, and you're thinking right. And right and wrong is not my point, but it's beneficial to you kind of a thing. And now it's like, dude, most of these problems would go away. If we got money out of the way, then those problems would go away. We wouldn't have marriage problems, occupation, job problems. We wouldn't have like money savings problems because money is so abundant. We don't think about it. It's like the supply of air. We don't think, do I have any air savings? Do I need air savings? Unless there's a lack of oxygen supply, I don't need air savings. No. If I like go underwater, try to hold my breath for a while or go climb Mount Everest or, go into space without the proper equipment, yeah, I'm going to have a hard time breathing. But come on, let's get real. Like we never think about that, but we think about money all the time. These top three fears are those in which money is the culprit of all the evils. The lack of money, not money. Excuse me. Let me reword myself. It's the lack of money, the lack of supply of resources, because money is just a utility. It's a tool, but the lack of the tool causes the fear of poverty. Environment. I cause people to drift into inharmonious and unpleasant environments in the home, in their places of occupation, and in their relationship with relatives and acquaintances. And I remain there until I claim them through the habit of drifting. So, what he's saying is after I spoil all of your relationships by not having enough money, the fear of poverty, I just come and I spoil a relationship and I just fester it over years and years and years until it's basically jacked. That's what he means by the environment. I jack up all the relationships in your life by having this fear of poverty being the root cause of all the nastiness in your life. Holy smokes. So far, it's 4 out of 4. Dominating thoughts. I cause people to drift into the habit of thinking negative thoughts. This leads to negative acts and involves people in controversies and fills their minds with fears, thus paving the way for me to enter and control their minds. When I move in, I do so by appealing to the people through negative thoughts which they believe to be their own. I plant the seeds of negative thought into the minds of people through the pulpit, the newspapers, the moving pictures, the radio, and all other popular methods of appeal to the mind, like the TikToks, the Netflixes, the Google search, the YouTubes, like all of these things, Instagrams, are going to be modern day ways that the same thoughts, negative thoughts, enter our mind. I cause people to allow me to do the thinking for them because they are too lazy and too indifferent to think for themselves. All right. I conclude from what you're saying that drifting and procrastination are the same thing. Is that true? Yes, that is correct. Any habit which causes one to procrastinate or to just putting off reaching a definite decision leads to the habit of drifting. All right, commentary time. Says the devil, I cause people to allow me to do their thinking for them because they're just too lazy or too indifferent to think for themselves. Here's an equation: laziness plus indifference equals procrastination. So laziness and indifference, they equal procrastination. This equals drifting. So if you've been putting off something, especially if it's been years and it's important, then this is going to occupy space in your brain and it's going to cause you to not think clearly. You're going to be reserving mental real estate for the naggingness of this thing not ever being done and accomplished. And instead of just taking the 5 minutes or 7 hours or 2 weeks, 3 months, or 10 years to finally address this problem, it nags you for the rest of your life potentially and causes you to drift. That's the equation. This describes a true drifter as defined by Hill. Since I've been a true procrastinator, I have. Since I've been a true procrastinator for most of my life, this hits a little too close to home for me. I like to use the excuse that I work best under pressure, but that's all it is. It's an excuse for why I procrastinate. Can you think of examples in your own life when laziness and indifference led you off your path to success? When an opportunity slipped through your fingers because you were too slow to seize it in time? All right. Is man the only creature who drifts? Yes, all other creatures move in response to definite laws of nature. Man alone defies nature's laws and drifts when he wills. Everything outside the minds of men is controlled by my opposition, by laws so definite that drifting is impossible. I control the minds of men solely because of their habit of drifting, which is only another way of saying that I control the minds of men only because they neglect or refuse to control and use their own goddamn minds. Right? Think about it. Use your own fucking head. I'm talking to you, Travis. Use our own fucking head, and we can take control of our own life. We don't use our head and we don't think. Well, someone will get in the driver's seat, like the donkey, and we get on the back of this donkey aimlessly going for a ride and running along with the buffalo who are being chased by Indians in the back to the edge of the cliff where we're going to inevitably reach and not have a way to turn around. And we're just running because our friends are running until we get to the end and see, like, oh shit, I've retired. I got no money in my bank account and I'm getting sick and I'm only going to live for another year and a half. Holy shit. And then I reach the end of life and I fall off the cliff like the buffalo did. Rather than catch yourself running with the buffalo and wake up and be like, oh shit, I'm running towards an indefinite end that has no other opportunity, and wake up and snap yourself out of it. But according to this, he's only controlling our minds because we neglect or refuse to control and use our own minds. So start using your own mind today. This is getting to be pretty deep stuff for mere human beings. Let's get back to the discussion of something that's a little less abstract. Please tell me exactly how this drifting habit affects people of the everyday walks of life, and tell me in terms of the average person can understand. Like a fifth grader layman term kind of a thing. I prefer to keep this interview up among the stars. No doubt you would, dumbass. That would save you from being exposed. But let's get back and come back to Earth. Tell me now what drifting is doing to us as a nation here in the United States. Frankly, I may as well tell you that I have a hate for the United States as only the devil can hate. That's interesting. What's the cause of this hatred? The cause was born on the July 4th, 1776, when 56 men signed a document which destroyed my chances of controlling the nation. You know that document as the Declaration of Independence. Had it not been for this influence of that damnable document, I would now have a dictator running the country. I would stop this right to free fucking speech and independent thought that is threatening my rule here on Earth. So, am I to so understand that from what you're saying, that nations controlled by self appointed dictators belong in your camp? There are no self appointed dictators. I appoint them all. Moreover, I manipulate them and direct them in my work. Nations run by my dictators now what they want and take it by force. Excuse me, know what they want and take it by force. Look what I've done through Mussolini in Italy. Look what I'm doing through Hitler in Germany. And look what I'm doing through Stalin in Russia. My dictators run those nations for me because the people have been subdued through the habit of drifting. My dictators, they do no drifting. That's why they rule for me the millions of people under their control. So, what would happen if Mussolini, Stalin, and Hitler turned traitors and disavowed you and your rule? That will not happen because I have them too well bribed. I'm paying each of them with the sop of his own vanity by making him believe that he's acting on his own account. That's another little trick of mine. All right, let's reel it on in and let's come back to the United States and learn something of what you are doing to convert people into the habit of drifting. All right. At the moment, right now, I am paving the way for a dictatorship by sowing the seeds of fear and uncertainty in the minds of the people. So, through whom are you carrying on your work exactly? Mainly through the President of the United States. I am destroying his influence with the people by causing him to drift on the question of a working agreement between employers and their employees. If I can induce him to drift for another year, he'll be so thoroughly discredited I can hand over the country to a dictator. If the president continues to drift, I will paralyze personal freedom in the United States, just as I destroyed it in Spain, Italy, Germany, and England. So, commentary. This is back in 1938 when Hill was writing this manuscript. The president was Franklin D. Roosevelt, FDR. Are the devil's comments applicable even for today? This is written in 2011. Do you think that Hill might write the same words today as he wrote 70 years ago? Or do you think Hill might write those same words today as he wrote 85 years ago? I mean, we've got Donald Trump now taking back over office for the last 4 years of a older gentleman by the name of Joe Biden, who was on the other side of the fence in Democratic world, and his vice president Kamala Harris was running for presidency as a Democratic candidate. And like in like in 2016 when Donald Trump won the first time over the first woman candidate, um, Hillary Clinton. He won in 2024 for his second seat in presidency over a woman candidate again, but she was also a black woman candidate. Um, and this is crazy, dudes. Like, no one's really talking about this, that Donald Trump came in as a businessman, business owner. As I'm not a pro-Trumper, but I'm saying he's challenging the way that things have always been done. And I'm being asked, would Hill write the same words today as he wrote 70 years ago? Yes, I think he would. I think there's nothing new under the sun, and people may change or may not change, but things are relatively similar. And I do think that there's opportunities, but even with every opportunity, there could be some adversity. And so don't think that just because one human being or one person steps into office as president, that everything is going to be completely changed for the better. It could be changed for the worse, but it could also be changed for the better as well. I'm not discrediting what's potentially happening. So we have an opportunity here to just like really pay attention to these words and say, like, okay, the ultimate freedom tool, the ultimate freedom keys that are being unlocked in this are financial freedoms, because once you are financially free, you now have options and choices. And if your other fear of not fear of poverty, but it's fear of death, if it's illness, if it's loss or it's aging or whatever those things were, but they are basically fear of death. Well, if you had resources, if you had money, if you had not the lack of fear of poverty because you just had so much wealth, that you could actually find ways to avert and avoid death. Like you could practice a safer life. You could hire chefs to make your food. You could go to sleep on time. You could travel the world, live stress free. You could have choices and options. You could have basically all the resources, all the things you could ever want, playing in all the places of the world you could ever want with the people that you actually wanted there. You know, it's not always about spending more time with your family. Maybe there's some family that you want to spend less time with. Instead of flying them in for Christmas, you might want to fly them out for Christmas. Like, where do you want to live? Like, if all houses and all cars cost the same, where would you live and what would you drive? Like, who would maybe drive you? Would you have some chauffeurs picking you up in a limousine? Would you be driving around a big city, or would you live out on a ranch? Would you have a farm, or would you build somewhere suburban in somewhere in between? Like, what kind of lifestyle would you want to have and have? Is it, you're single? Would you like to have a family? Would you like to have kids and grandkids? Or one day, you've got indestructible generational wealth that you're realizing, hey, you know what? No matter what plays out, none of my, downstream generations of families ever have to worry about a thing. But they'll learn the same hard work and principles and fail on their feet and get up and, create their own world and destiny just like I did. Somehow it seems like we all need to go through hardships. But why does money have to be the primary hardship? There's still other hardships that we can encounter through this life in this world if we got money out of the way. See, I'm not saying it's going to solve all of the problems of the world, but it solves a lot of them. I mean, if money was such a freedom of abundance of resource, would there be sex trafficking? Would there be drug trafficking? Would there be wars? Maybe there would be wars and conflict over power, but I feel like the root cause of why there's this underground railroad of child and sex traffickers, people that steal other human beings and sell them, is because they're making money. Yes, there's some power there. Yes, there's some other influence and factors there. But if you like made it like free, like, hey, you're going to do this thing and you're not going to get paid at all. In fact, you're going to just do it all for free. And it's in exchange because it's a resource based economy. And you built an economy based off of twisted weirdos. And there's people that want these things, but you're not going to get paid anything. You're not going to get any resources. You're going to do this for free because you love it. There might still be a small population of the world that would do it, but most of them probably would stop. Same goes for drug trafficking. Cause like, hey, yeah, if you were to like traffic these drugs and be a drug lord or a mafia boss and do this stuff, but you would never get paid, you would never get more resources. You just do it all because you love it. There'd still be some that would do it, but I'm imagining most would feel like this is risky. Like, I'm doing stuff and almost getting killed every day, and I'm not getting paid for it. No way am I gonna do this stuff anymore. So you see, this is abstract thinking. But if all the world was like dude, awesome. I don't need to worry about money anymore. Now I'm going to do things that like fall under the category of my passion and something that I feel like a purpose and called to do. Like I want to make a difference in the world and help these types of people out. So I'm going to start following my gifts, my passion, and be multiplied in that because I'm actually good at it and I'm providing a value for other people. And then I follow this thing that I feel called to do, which is like my purpose, and I know how I'm gonna help these people, which is my plan. It's like I'm gonna help them get what they want by doing this way of thinking and delivering a product, service, my knowledge, or showing them how to do it, or transforming their lives, or giving a service, or painting their house, or doing something, reading a book to them, smiling, baking them a pie, any number of infinite ways of thinking, and I'll actually just do it and I perform. And that's the simple equation that I believe is in all of us. If we actually take control of our lives and get money out of the way and recognize that it's it's up to us to decide. We have the ability to say that we get to decide there is no fate. So when he says, what you say leads me to the conclusion that drifting is a weakness which inevitably ends in failure, whether among individuals or nations. Is that your claim? Drifting is the most common cause of failure in every walk of life, and I can control anyone who I can induce to form the habit of drifting on any subject. The reason for this is twofold. First, the drifter has just so much putty in my hands to be molded into whatever pattern I choose, because drifting actually destroys the power of individual initiative. Second, the drifter cannot get help from my opposition because the opposition is not attracted to anything so soft and useless. Now, that's not true. It's just that the opposition is taking the commands of the individual creator. That's us. We're co creators and we're asking, hey, I want to suck. And then our creator is like, yeah, bro, you suck. Here you go. There's nothing that it's like the opposition is not attracted to us because we're soft and useless. That's just mean words, right? The truth is the opposition is just taking our orders. Universal Chef's just saying like, "Oh, dude," from the waiter, "Hey, waiter, what did Travis want? Well, Travis wants this thing. Okay, I'll give it to him. It sucks. I could give him all this cool stuff over here, but he's not unattracted. I believe that the universal chef is only there to take every single one of our orders relentlessly because an eternal love is there, no matter what. And it breaks their heart, likely, when they make us some crappy food, when they could be giving us some like really sweet food, like hors d'oeuvres, main course and dessert that's like everything we could ever imagine and want. Yet we're like putting in these, you know, Pop Tart orders and we stick it in the microwave because we want it even faster than a toaster oven. So we get this mushy Pop Tart when we could have like the most amazing meal made instantaneously, but we don't order that. Okay, I digress. Is that why a few people are wealthy while the majority of the people are poor? That's exactly the reason poverty, like physical illness, is a contagious disease. You'll find it always among the drifters, never among those who know what they want and are determined to get just that. It may mean something to you when I call your attention to the fact that the non drifters, whom I do not control, and those who possess most of the wealth of the world happen to be the same people. All right. So I've always understood that money was the root of all evil, but that the poor and the meek would inherit heaven, while the wealthy would pass it into your hands. But what would you have to say of that claim? It sounds like a bunch of garbage now, right? Men who know how to get the material things of life generally know how to keep me out of the hands of the devil as well. The ability to acquire things is contagious, as a matter of fact. Drifters acquire nothing except that which no one else wants, really. If more people had definite aims and stronger desires for material and spiritual riches, I would have fewer victims. Commentary. The actual verse of the Bible talks about the love of money, not money itself. For the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil in 1 Timothy 6:10. So I assume from what you say that you don't claim fellowship with the industrial leaders. Evidently, they're not friends of yours, right? Friends of mine? I'll tell you what sort of friends of mine they are. They belted the entire country with good roads, thus bringing into close communion the people of both city and country. They've converted ores into steel, with which they built the skeletons of great skyscrapers. They've harnessed electrical power and converted it into 1,000 uses, all designed to give man time to think. They provided through the automobile personal transportation to the humblest citizen, thus giving to everyone the freedom of travel. They provided every home with instantaneous news of what is happening in all parts of the world through the aid of the radio. And now, television, smartphone, satellite, and internet. That's some extra commentary. They reared libraries in every city, town, and hamlet, and they filled them with books, giving them to all who need read a complete outline of the most useful knowledge mankind has gathered from his experiences. They've given the humblest citizen the right to express his own opinion on any subject, any time, anywhere, without fear of molestation, and they've even seen to it that every citizen can help make his own laws, levy his own taxes, and manage his own country through the ballot. These are but some of the things that industrial leaders have done to give every citizen the privilege of becoming a non drifter. Do you think that these men have helped my cause? Who are some of the present day non drifters over whom you've got no control? I have control over no non drifter, present or past. I control the weak, not those who think for themselves. All right, we'll just go ahead and describe a typical drifter. Give your description point by point so I can recognize a drifter when I see him. The first thing is you'll notice about a drifter is his total lack of major purpose in life. He'll be conspicuous by his lack of self confidence. He'll never accomplish anything required thought and effort. He spends all he earns, and he spends more than he earns too, even if he can get credit. He'll be sick or ailing from some real or imaginary cause and calling to high heaven if he suffers the least physical amount of pain. He'll have little or no imagination. He will lack enthusiasm and initiative to begin anything that he's not forced to undertake, and he'll plainly express his weakness by taking the line of least resistance whenever he can do so. He'll be ill tempered and lacking in control over his emotions. His personality will be without magnetism and it will not attract other people. He'll have opinions on everything but accurate knowledge of nothing. He may be jack of all trades, but good at none. He'll neglect to cooperate with those around him, even those on whom he must depend for food and shelter. He'll make the same mistakes over and over again, never profiting by failure. He'll be narrow minded and intolerant on all subjects, ready to crucify those who may disagree with him. He'll expect everything of others, but will be willing to give little or nothing in return. He may begin many things, but he'll actually complete nothing. He'll be loud in his condemnation of his government, but he'll never tell you definitely how it can be improved. He'll never reach decisions on anything if he can avoid it, and if he's forced to decide, he will reverse himself at the first opportunity. He'll eat too much and exercise too little. He'll take a drink of liquor if someone else will pay for it. He'll gamble if he can do it on the cuff. He'll criticize others who are succeeding in their chosen calling. In brief, the drifter will work harder to get out of thinking than most others work in earning a good living. He'll tell a lie rather than admit his ignorance on any subject. And if he works for others, he'll criticize them to their backs and flatter them to their faces. Hmm. Thank you. You've given me a graphic description of the drifter. Now, please describe the non drifter so that I may characterize him or her on sight. The first sign of a non drifter is this: he's always engaged in doing something definite through some well organized plan, which is definite. He has a major goal in life toward which he's always working, and many minor goals, all of which lead towards his central scheme. The tone of his voice, the quickness of his step, the sparkle in his eyes, the quickness of his decisions clearly mark him as a person who knows exactly what he wants and is determined to get it, no matter how long it may take or what the price he must pay. If you ask him questions, he gives you direct answers and he never falls back on evasions or resorts to subterfuge. He extends many favors to others, but accepts favors sparingly or not at all. He'll be found up front whether he's playing a game or fighting a war. If he doesn't know the answers, he will say so frankly. He's got a good memory and he never offers an alibi for his shortcomings. He never blames others for his mistakes, no matter if they deserve the blame. He's used to be known as a go getter, but in modern times, he's called the go giver. You'll find him running the biggest business in town, living on the best street, driving the best automobiles, and making his presence felt wherever he happens to be. He's an inspiration to us all, and he comes into contact with his mind. He's an inspiration to all who comes into contact with his mind. The major distinguishing feature of this non drifter is this: he has a mind of his own and he uses it for all purposes. Commentary: the non drifter has a mind of his own and uses it for his uses it for all purposes. Can you think of someone who you know who fits this description? Is that person a non drifter? Is a non drifter born with some mental, physical, or spiritual disadvantage? Or, excuse me, is the non drifter born with some mental, physical, or spiritual advantage not available to the drifter? No, the major difference between the drifter and the non drifter is something equally available to both. It's simply the prerogative right of each to use his own mind and think for himself. So, what brief message would you send to the typical drifter if you wish to cure him of this, say, evil habit? I would admonish him to wake up and give. Give what? Some sort of form of service useful to as many people as possible. All right. So the non drifter is supposed to give, is he? Yes, if he expects to get, he must give before he gets. Some people doubt that you even exist. Don't change the subject. I wouldn't worry about that if I were you. Those who are ready to be converted from the habit of drifting recognize the authenticity of this interview by its soundness of counsel. The others are just not worth the trouble it would take to convert them. Why don't you try to stop me from publishing this confession I'm wringing out from you? Because that would be the surest way of all ways to guarantee that you will actually publish it. I have a better plan than trying to suppress publication of my confession. I will urge you to go ahead with the publication, then I'll sit back and watch you suffer when some of my faithful drifters begin to make things hot for you. I will need not worry or deny your story. My followers will do that for me. See if they don't. Commentary in the end of chapter 4. Knowing that indeed this book was not published for more than 70 years after Hill wrote these chilling words, I'm intrigued and anxious to learn what else Hill will reveal. There are plenty of fireworks still ahead.